Welcome everyone, this is Denny and Karl with GetWisdom, and today we're going to continue with our channeling series. And today Karl is going to channel Hunter S. Thompson, the father of Gonzo journalism. And he's a pretty popular fellow. Most people in the United States probably have heard of this guy. There was a movie done about him starring Johnny Depp, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. He covered the Democratic National Convention in 1968 and some other notable things. But unfortunately had kind of a sad end. But he was a remarkable figure, remarkable writer, and several documentaries were made about him after his passing. And so that's our subject for today. We have 5 questions. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Karl. And maybe we can have a discussion about Gonzo journalism and Hunter S. Thompson.
Okay, Danny. Well, thanks for hosting this, and thanks to all of you who are watching. We hope this will be enlightening and of interest, and we never know going in for sure what will emerge from the consciousness of someone in the light we connect to. But the purpose is always a lofty one. We want to be inspired and informed about things having to do with them and their lives that teach us something about our world and about ourselves indirectly. So that's the kind of overarching purpose of this enterprise, to talk with light beings who've had skin in the game. They've been here, they've incarnated, they've been on the ramparts, some of them, others more of a checkered past, involved with something unsavory, but of rather large importance. And as eyewitnesses to history, can really help us understand where negativity comes from and what to do about it. And that's the overall purpose of Get Wisdom, to probe the unknown and get divine help in doing so. Because that's really the only help you can rely on that is going to be honest and fair. Everything else is suspect because everything else is manipulated and controlled to varying degrees. So our world is heavily corrupted and managed and stage managed. And everyone is bombarded with all kinds of programming and manipulation to change their thinking, the way their mind thinks, and change their beliefs to create widespread complacency. So we have a high tolerance for things that are bizarre and really counterproductive, and
Not
we
well
might
explained.
see it. Yeah,
Things,
we might see it, we might not. But even if we see it, we're not aroused to take any particular action. And so it's all too easy to throw up our hands and say, well, it's not my responsibility, it's not my job, and who's going to listen to me? I'm just a citizen, and so on. And this is how everything sort of limps along. And people are not happy about the way things are, but they're unable to change it. So something needs to change, and knowledge can be power.
Yeah.
So we're seeking truths here. That's really what we want.
He was a real whistleblower, but he was kind of like also grew into kind of a caricature of himself. And his journalism is like he was part of the story because he was such an outlandish figure. You know, he was a heavy drinker, heavily into drug use, challenged to authority all the time, would make up stuff about politicians and everything. And I think at first, the stories I heard was that he could operate as a journalist, as a kind of an anonymous figure. Like he could show up at a press conference in the early days and no one would know who he was. And then later in life, he became the story, literally. I mean, people were flocking and following him around and stuff like that. And so he didn't have that the objectivity, and I'm not sure where I'm really going with this, but one of the things that I noticed as compared to one of our more recent channeling subjects, Ted Gunderson, who was a whistleblower, but he was a Christian. He believed in God. The guy believed in God. He would tell you that right off the bat. This fellow, Hunter S. Thompson, I think he was an atheist. I'm pretty sure he was an atheist. I never heard anything about his religious views or his faith or anything about God or anything. But boy, you could not call him not a whistleblower. I mean, he went to great lengths to out things that where it was dangerous to just do so. I mean, the book that made him famous was when he kind of like infiltrated the Hell's Angels. And he wrote a book about them that pissed them off. He got beaten up for it. There was a Hell's Angel there in the crowd when they were beating him up that actually got him out of it. There's some speculation that had it gone on, they would have killed him. And so he was, the guy. He took his journalism pretty seriously. Most people didn't go where he went, and many who did ended up paying for it with their lives. So,
well, the religious tend to pride themselves in their faith and their membership in their particular denomination or way of believing and worship and all that. And they think they're the righteous ones, and they're not only in the right, but there's a kind of an entitlement that goes with it, and a kind of supremacist view in a way that is off-putting and segregates people into warring factions.
Except to be fair, in this example I was giving, Ted wasn't like that. Ted would not lead with his Christian perspective.
Okay,
that came up. If someone asked him, he would tell them, but he never led with that, as far as I know.
Well, I'm not I don't mean to indict all churchgoers and mosque
Yeah.
attenders and all that.
Yeah.
It's just there's a fair amount of that. And one of the problems with traditional religion, it has been corrupted, just like everything else
Right.
of an intellectual sort has been corrupted. Science is corrupted. History is corrupted, rewritten in many ways, and things hidden from us. And why should it not be the same with regard to religion? So we've been told that the scriptures have been edited
Yeah.
to take things out and other things inserted and things twisted around to change their meaning. And so what I was trying to get to is that those who kind of ignore religion, don't take part, can do so because they see a deeper truth, that there's something fishy about what the religious dogma
Yeah.
is promoting.
Right.
And I think that was true for me when I was young. I was raised in a Christian family, and I largely bought the idea of the reality of the divine. But I didn't like the Bible. I didn't like the stories. I didn't like the killing and the mass death that was supposedly ordered by God and all those
Yeah.
things. And I just turned off, So, that may be what this guy was like, that he was intuitively seeing a deeper truth about the world as he observed it, and just chose to be independent
Right.
because he saw everything else had flaws.
Yeah.
The news outlets, the newspapers, and the
Right.
magazine writers, and
that
the
was his
publishers.
calling card, really, was his fierce independence. I mean, he took it to, it was off-putting. I mean, people didn't like him because he was so abrasive in that regard. Just, doing it my way,
Yeah. Well, he probably was his own worst enemy. His personality was such that he was like that, and that,
especially later in life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are many who are in that camp and they get away with it. Most do not, but those who have a certain genius can kind of survive despite their being a curmudgeon. They become a kind of iconoclast who maintains a reputation and a status in spite of themselves, in spite of their impolitic demeanor and behavior. So they're people who can insult the powerful and get away with it.
Right. Yeah.
Most people can't.
Some of his biggest fans were people that were like in the crosshairs. I mean, like he hated Nixon. He just hated Richard Nixon. But one of Richard Nixon's advisors, I can't remember his name now, was a huge fan of him and would read all, the articles that Hunter S. Thompson would put out in the Rolling Stone. The Rolling Stone picked him up, Rolling Stone magazine tolerated all kinds of stuff that came from Hunter S. Thompson. There were stories about the editors having to live with him in order just to get an article done. Because of all the drinking and drug use and stuff like that. But they were always happy with the end result, And did you see the movie with Johnny Depp? The movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas?
I have not seen that one, frankly.
Yeah.
But I was aware of him while he was doing his thing. I'm in that generation.
Yeah.
And I used to read those publications and found some of it inspiring. Some of it, to me, seemed like opposing kind of behavior and was off-putting. And he was trying to be, a rebel, and he succeeded.
Yeah.
And I saw that it worked for him, that people paid attention. So, it's just.
Yeah, I think he was around when a lot of people were desperate for finding a different way of doing things because they felt so helpless with the Vietnam War just continuing and all the corruption in politics, and then they couldn't see that there was the candidacy of McGovern and everything that happened with that, and then the assassinations. He was apparently really upset when they killed Robert Kennedy. That just took the wind out of his sails. Between that and the what happened in Chicago in 1968, he was devastated by that. And so we have a question about it. We have 5 questions for him in this channeling today. So hopefully he'll get a chance to say what he thinks is a light being, and I hope he kind of harkens back to some of the stuff that he some of the perspectives he had while he was a human, because it was so different. And just most writers weren't and still aren't willing to do what he did. You just have to look really hard to find writers like him. And I would imagine a lot of writers who might be like him now, their writing would never see the light of day because there's such a clamp down now on the stuff that was avant-garde is now mainstream. I mean, I don't know of anything controversial coming out of Rolling Stone magazine in the last 20 years. Maybe I haven't been paying attention, but there's a kind of a sameness that pervades all media now, in my view.
Well, we know there is a clampdown on the culture.
Yeah.
And when there isn't a clampdown, or there are people like that, that is often orchestrated. So that's another thing that would be interesting to know and hear from him. To what extent maybe he was serving the powers that be just to create trouble, to foment discord, and confusion, and because that's the traditional strategy used by the darkness, the interlopers. It's divide and conquer.
Yes,
and they do it by making people pick sides.
Yeah.
In opposition to each other, and they get the game all ramped up and worked up in people's minds. Yeah. And you see that all through society today.
Right, and the particular division doesn't really matter, just as long as there is a division.
Yeah,
they'll make it up over anything. If you can divide the people, that's the goal. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is or what the ETs might believe. They don't care.
they don't care about us. And this is the sad irony, that we're acting as their representatives with our conduct to just create a huge distraction to prevent anything good from happening. So we don't really advance as a species. We are in a state of decline,
right,
and degradation. And it's getting worse, and our world is getting more fragile. And we're looking to the wrong things for answers. All this technology, it makes us more vulnerable. It cheapens things and makes us dependent. And it creates many kinds of obsessions. And it's so disheartening. When I go out and walk the dog today, when I see an adult and a child, like at a playground or something, the mom's on her cell phone. The kid's playing, she's completely ignoring the kid. She's on her cell phone. So are the dads.
Yeah.
They're walking a dog. They're walking with their kids. They're strolling with a buggy. They're not talking to the baby, the little tyke. They're on their phone, looking at their screens and stuff. This is not a normal thing.
No.
When you give up being connected to other human beings in order to be connected with a device.
Or even your environment, the natural environment, like trees.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
We really need that. It's a part of being human, to be a part of that nature.
Right.
As best we can find it, even in a city park, if that's all you have access to.
Yeah.
Or even just a parkway with a few trees along the concrete, at least it's something.
Yeah. And
you can enjoy the light and shadow and the rustle of the leaves and things. And so the world is a very disturbed place. We need help here.
Yeah, exactly. So he I think he took his life in I think it was 2011, and he had a little ranch house out, I think it was in Colorado. And his family was there at the house when he did this. And he was always kind of a gun nut. That was one thing that was well known about him. He had lots of guns. And he'd also talk very openly about suicide. about that's the way he wanted to go. I think he was interested in having control of everything, as much as he possibly could in his life. I mean, because I think he felt out of control in the world of politics and which way the world was going. And a lot of people stylized him as kind of a patriot, but a very troubled patriot at that. So, like I say, we have 5 questions for him. I guess we should go ahead and get started and see what he has to say.
All right. I will connect to him so he can speak through me. As a channeler, I do the work through Creator of all that is. I go up to God and ask to be connected to my target for safety and accuracy. And I spend a lot of energy and effort to protect the work from such contamination. Most channelers don't work that way. They just send their consciousness out and trust that they'll be rewarded. And the sad reality is they're met with someone to say hello and do a handshake and then develop a relationship. And it's an imposter, almost always. Most channelers are not channeling who they think. They're not talking to archangels or ascended masters. They're talking to an extraterrestrial psychic. Why? To disempower them, to keep them on the sidelines, just being fed, warmed over spiritual happy talk from our culture. So it rings true. People will like it because it'll be about love and upliftment and promises of great things and so on. So this is serious. This is a serious undertaking. And it's risky to do because we're not supposed to be doing it. We're not supposed to be innovating. We're not supposed to be breaking out of our cage and talking to people in the light. And the interlopers do not believe in the hereafter and the Almighty, but they fear human consciousness and what it can do. So that's why they try to interfere with things like channeling and do big time. So I just say that as a warning to be careful of channelers and be skeptical and be safe whenever you do an outreach with your own mind, even if it's just meditation. Ask for divine protection and don't be shy. Don't be embarrassed about it. If you're not much of a believer, allow the possibility and just hang on to that. It's better than nothing.
Yeah, it could make a huge difference.
It can. It can.
Okay.
You can't get help from God if you don't believe in God. There's a catch there. So people need to get back at it and work on their faith a little bit. But it can really, really make a difference. And that's why we're different from almost everybody else out there. It's no accident. It's because we're in divine alignment and work at it. And that's the difference you will see in the messages that come through. We don't want to hear dark things. We don't want to be focused on trouble and suffering. But my goodness, the world is filled with it, and we need to get to the bottom of things and find ways forward. And the answer is the divine realm and getting their help. So I'm sure we'll get an earful about that. So I'll shut up now.
Okay.
And do my job. So give me a moment and we'll see if we can connect here.
Okay, thanks.
This is Hunter.
Thanks for joining
Thompson.
us. It was reported that you shot yourself to end your life. Was there spirit manipulation involved in this act? What do you think about your options at that time, now that you're light being again?
I look on this with sadness from my human self perspective, and now being informed from my light being self perspective. See the great loss it represented that I became so disparaging of my world and my ability to make a difference and to use my inner talent and my drive for anything further, to so give up on myself as I gave up on the world. None of that was natural, healthy, or in divine alignment, certainly. There is a time when suicide is the lesser of evils, so to speak. You have sovereignty over your being and are in charge of your existence and your life both. That is a blessing from the Creator. You choose when you come into life as a physical being. You choose who you do it with and whose family you belong to. You choose when to leave, and in many respects, how that comes about. Not always in those details, but as a general rule and in a general way, this is always so. And very specifically, when you choose the time and place and manner of death. In my case, it was a manipulation, and one that had gone on for many, many years, working steadily to undermine me. This is a fate that can befall anyone, but particularly those who are in the public eye and who could be a thorn in the side of the powers that be, the established thinking and the established institutions that are challenged by someone who has a deeper way of seeing truth and points out the shortcomings, the inconsistencies, the illogical nature of those institutions that are deemed part of the fabric of life and praiseworthy and believed to be well-intentioned by the general public. The experts, those in authority, as well as those in actual power, all are living a kind of illusion because, as Shakespeare cautioned, the world is a stage play in motion. It is ever changing, ever growing, but a stage play nonetheless. It is an orchestration, and not just by the players as he portrayed it. It is an orchestration of many layers and many levels. The interlopers control it all, directly or indirectly, and much they do through the individual human beings they alter, to be corrupted in some way or another, to foment discord, this factious way of interacting you described as the divide and conquer consequence of the interlopers present in your world, all of which is true. They worked on me relentlessly to corrupt me, to contaminate my beliefs, to drag me down, to disempower me, and to induce conduct, thinking, and actions they knew that would get me in trouble and thus complicate my life and create setbacks that would take me out of action, keep me out of harm's way, in other words, at least for a good long while. And ultimately moved in many ways to kill me. And engineered this to have it done by my own hand. I was working at killing myself with drugs and alcohol for many, many years before I ended my life more violently and directly and with greater certainty. This was a war within me because it was only a portion of my mind they were able to manipulate. This is typically what happens with inner corruption. By spirit meddlers, these dark, former angelic beings working against humanity and against the divine in everything they think and do. They are rapacious and savage in wanting to take from the living, because that is the only way they still survive. They are vicious, they are evil, and that is after millennia of disconnection, when they have had to become savage, to cling to life at the expense of others. When you have beings like this within your own energy, and they are trash talking a deep part of your mind 24 hours a day, it will take a toll on you through imposing a chronic stress, if not a change in thinking and actions on your part, although the latter can happen as well. Many people are tipped into madness. Some become criminals, even mass killers. They are driven to it and pushed over the edge by consciousness within them, maintaining a drumbeat of false encouragement, and sometimes reinforced by threats to ramp up inner fears. If someone becomes convinced there are people out to get them and will be coming for them soon, and their only last chance to leave a mark and send a message is to kill some of those working against them, they may well believe it and buy a weapon to carry out the deed. The fault lies not with that hapless perpetrator who becomes a victim of their own action as well. The fault is within the forces of evil, manipulating and distorting the thinking of the host to carry out such dark deeds. I was too independent-minded to be constrained and contained. Indeed, my drive and my desire to follow my curiosity and to bring to light any dark doings I observed put me at great risk. I was unwanted everywhere I went because I would blurt out all the uncomfortable secrets and hidden truths about the powerful and about the way society conducts its affairs, and make no bones about it. I was indeed a thorn in the side of many in the establishment and many institutions who saw me as their critic and feared me because of my inability to be controlled and constrained. They finally got to me and had me do the deed. But it was a murder just as surely as they had sent someone to my door to shoot me outright and disappear into the night. That, in fact, was done. But through my consciousness from within my own being, by another consciousness cheering me on in the worst possible way for the worst possible conduct, I came to believe their message in the end, that my life had been a series of goofball irregularities, making me persona non grata. And in contrast to my dreams of greatness in terms of having an impact that could change the world for the better, came to see my relative impotence and insignificance, other than being a kind of macabre entertainment and a trivial one to many people, like being an ant at a picnic, uninvited and unwanted, and a kind of pest and an embarrassment. To be sure, I caused a lot of that backlash through my demeanor and my personality. But I can assure you that there was a divine purpose behind it. Sometimes the troublemaker, the rebellious individual who goes against the grain, the class clown who bursts the bubble of the infinite power seemingly residing within the teacher, who is nothing more than a mean and nasty overseer, wanting only to do as little work as possible and keep everyone under their thumb, so they draw no criticism from someone higher in the hierarchy, but not truly caring about the children in their charge. I was like a class clown for society, blowing the whistle, poking at the pomposity and the posturing of government officials and the officialdom representing all of society's institutions, the pompous pundits and the so-called experts who adhere to a kind of party line, narrow viewpoint that has long ago been proven to be of little or no value because society is not advancing. There is something wrong, and no one can tell the truth about it. That was my strength, but it was also my Achilles heel. Because when I was attacked and diminished, often through giving in to temptations, that was viewed as a source of personal failure, weakness, and a reason to be condemned by those very individuals who feared the truth I was bringing forward. And it provided an easy way for them to lash back at me. And I was discredited and discounted many, many times because I was my own worst enemy in many respects. Being so irreverent and so obstinate and obnoxious in my willingness to call out those in power in too direct a fashion and too direct for my own good, as it turned out. I regret only I could not do it better and more effectively than things turned out to be. I did leave a mark. My passing through was a study in contrast between someone who sees truth and the masses who see nothing because they are truly asleep and have no idea the world could be vastly different than it is and needs to be if they want to save their own soul or be a part of a gigantic failure. Those who do not speak out, who do not criticize, who do not resist manipulation of them are complicit. It really is that simple. It is not my judgment. It is an energetic equation built into the universe, the law of karma. It sees the right and the wrong in all interchanges in the form of energy. What energy is dominant and what energy is not? Does that lead to something greater or does it lead to something lesser? Whatever the outcome, it is recorded for all of time. What took place? Who did what to whom? That cannot be escaped. And it becomes the fate of all who have come along, launching their energy into the world, their consciousness, making things happen or not, as the case may be. Are you a force for good? Or are you a simpleton, succumbing and surrendering to mind control manipulation to freeze you in place like a figurine on a mantle, watching life pass by, but not truly participating in anything to change the world for the better, even on a local level with your own life? That is a sorry consequence and becomes, in effect, a self-condemnation. That condemnation is through your own hands, your own choices, and the consequences of your life, your existence here, in what you do and what you do not do. Those who choose to stay asleep are being manipulated, and that is a mitigating factor. But only up to a point. You came down to fight for truth, to support the divine, and to save humanity from the evildoers. How is that contest going? What have you done lately for the light? Keep in mind, working for the light is working for yourself. I would trade my life a dozen times over for a chance to do one more act of loving kindness to influence someone for the better. That is because I am a light being now, and I see all that it means to be a part of Creator's plan and know the implications. I died because I was ignorant of the deeper truth. That does not have to be your fate. I thought in the end, my triviality of existence was a reflection of the world itself. I took responsibility for my actions, but became, in effect, defeated, thinking that the world was impervious to positive change. I was selling you out in that conclusion, and myself more than anyone. I underestimated the true power I held within. If I had been more effective in being in greater divine alignment and able to resist the vices I indulged in that constrained me and sapped my energy far too much, and if in any way I could support the search for divinity in things more directly, more openly, and more effectively, I would have accomplished much more as a light worker than being a kind of character people make movies about and kind of look at and wonder, how could anyone be so brash, so bold, so shocking, and seem to bounce back and get away with it? That is hardly an achievement in a world of complacency. It, in effect, was an act of great courage. But I can take little credit being unaware of who I was truly opposing through my actions. It wasn't the staid, buttoned down minds of the conservative leadership in the world's institutions at all levels. It was the interlopers and their mind manipulation, keeping the world in a kind of prison. I was bringing keys to their cells. I could turn the key in the lock, but I could not swing the door open and make them walk free. This is what your channel is doing, providing keys to the cells of your jail. It is you who must walk free and make that choice. You need not end up like me, defeated and dying at my own hand at the behest of evildoers, depraved and corrupted beings who are transferring that corruption to you as rapidly and thoroughly as they can.
Okay, thank you. You are not known as a man who cried, but one time you did. After returning home from the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, stating that you saw beatings there from the police against the demonstrators that were far worse than anything you witnessed while covering the Hells Angels, and seeing their violence when you were researching your first and famous book, Hells Angels. Supposedly, it was along with the assassination of Robert Kennedy that changed your outlook for the future of the United States. What can you tell us about these events and their influence on you, using the same direct analysis that made you such a good writer?